If you are considering getting an MFA in creative writing, you need to stop right now because I am an advocate for your goals as a writer. I want you to push yourself to your creative limits and share your work with as many people as possible. And I guarantee you that the 2 or 3 year long detour called MFA programs are not honoring those goals. Most of the time, they take you further away from those goals. So once upon a time, I wanted legitimacy as a writer. I wanted my parents, my grandparents, my friends to know that I was legit. But I wasn't a legendary writer like all these names you see behind me. I also didn't have the courage to step into a mindset and lifestyle that would help me become one of these writers by just focusing on my writing. So what did I do? I found the MFA solution. I could focus on my writing, be around other writers, and get everyone off my back for a couple years. Hey, look, I'm at an MFA program. I'm getting a master's degree. I'm important. Don't worry about me. And the idea of legitimacy and prestige brought so many people into these programs. But the number one thing that all young writers should be focused on, yes, and there is something, this is the prescription, is isolation. When, once again, I look at all the greats behind me, they were spending time alone and grinding. When I look at all the greats behind me, none of them went to MFA program. And if you ask the ones, great writers who have, most of the time, unless they're a professor now and a part of the machine, they say it really wasn't worth it. One of the best writers of the 21st century, David Foster Wallace, said that his time at the University of Arizona in the MFA program felt like a prison. It made him feel like a lesser than writer, even though we now know he's one of the greats. And so if we look at isolation and time in general, are you going to find that at an MFA program? You're going to have to engage in a master's program. You're probably going to have to teach some classes. You're going to be in very intimate workshop settings with random people. Is that promoting isolation? Is that promoting the growth that we need? Absolutely not. And so I want to, first of all, address the workshop. The workshop axiomatically is very ineffective because it brings together random people without ties and people who are focusing very hard on subpar work. You are managing your courses, you're managing your teaching, and then you're thus writing subpar short stories at a time in your life where you're not even an expert yet. You haven't even put in the 10,000 hours yet. And you're going to give it to a group of young writers who also are in the same situation as you, who aren't going to really, who don't care about you, and a professor who's only a professor, a creative writing professor, because they couldn't become good enough to be a full-time writer. And then they are going to critique your work. And a lot of the time, if you are creative or divergent, they're going to be very logical about it, and they can be negative. I mean, there's actually nothing good, because if they're positive, then that maybe will develop you an ego. There's really no way out. Workshopping and critique really isn't required until you get a book published and you're working with an editor. Plenty of people have attained mastery of writing with zero help and then cleaned up their work with an editor. On this channel, I love, Cormac McCarthy. I believe he's the greatest greatest living novelist. And he's never in his life hung out with other writers, talked to other writers, and he submitted his work cold to Random House and worked with 2 editors his entire life. So then another huge thing are the connections, right? Network. It's awesome, right? You get to go hang out with other writers. You have access to professors. I had professors that were Pulitzer Prize finalists, people who had published plenty of, authors who have published plenty of books. But here's one question I'm going to ask you right now. Outside of their jobs, think of your professor or any writer in general. Outside of their job, do they have friends? Do they work with other writers that aren't paying money for the program? And the answer is yes. As an eco-poet, as an eco-writer, I have made friends with professors, with authors all around the world. And if I needed to send something to them to look at or run an idea off of them, they would willingly answer me and probably try really hard because they like me, because we've been corresponding for years and they know what I'm doing. That cost me $0. And more so, a professor at your creative writing program, unless you are very selective, unless you choose one specifically, they aren't going to be aligned with your vision and with your literature. If you're going to have a mentor or have one of these people, you want someone who's right in the right genre, who believes and can help you get to the right place, not some random person who's going to be adapting and projecting their weird stuff onto you. You want someone who can see the vision. And if you are writing and you are good enough, that's the other thing. If you spend time in isolation and you are good enough, you can get the attention of the people in your little niche, and they will help you all for free. And and they will help you because you'll be able to help them. If you are good enough, you are kind enough, it's a reciprocal relationship. An MFA program is a monetary relationship. And I have a job, I'm sure you have a job, and I slack off all the time because I know my job doesn't care about. All my friends who are professors, most of the time they are depressed, they're on SSRIs, and they are not giving 100% to their students. And if they are, then they're not giving 100% to their life, thus not making them a very good candidate. And even worse, the networking that you're going to be doing with all these other writers are people who believe that they can't create value with their own writing, because that's the goal, right? We need to be able to create value. I need to be able to write a book and it's valuable for other people. Well, all an MFA program is a group of people who aren't able to do that, or they're wanting to do that, but they believe that the best way there is through fellowships and through a university system. And if that doesn't work out, and that's the inherent flaw with an MFA system, is there is always an out. The out is that you can just go on and get a PhD and become a creative writing professor or a professor at a community college, making a little bit of money, or a high school teacher. There's always a road out other than actually spending time in isolation, putting in the work, and becoming a good writer. That's what it's all about. And obviously this is a much bigger issue for high residency programs, programs where you have to be there. I know people who've had moderate success in low residency programs. Joe Milan Jr. just published a book called The All-American. He went to a low residency program in Vermont, I think one of the best ones. And one of the professors there is Douglas Glover. I have a couple of his books on writing, and this guy is a whiz when it comes to sentence structure. So it's like, oh, okay, maybe something like that's worth it. But in low residency programs, there's almost never any money offered. There's never a full scholarship offered, tuition waived plus a stipend. So then you're paying this money. So if we look at the money, it's like, okay, I'm going to a low residency program or a program without a stipend, and you're spending $20,000, $30,000, whatever amount a year. And where's that money coming from? It could be, I guess, coming from your parents, or from you working up and saving, or from student loans. And all of those at some level are bad ideas. The money's coming from your parents. There's that inherent expectation. If you are taking student loans, there's a pressure on you to perform, or you're just going to screw yourself over in life in general. And if you're working a job, then why not work a job, save up money to live for a year or two without a job, very meagerly, and then just focus on networking with writers in your niche for free instead of paying money? It doesn't equate. And the biggest telltale sign of all of this is if you look at all the MFA programs in the country, and go to the graduation and see, I've known so many MFA graduates. If you look at them on graduation day, have they published a work yet? They spent 3 years working on something, 2 or 3 years working on a poetry book, 50 poems, a 75,000 word novel. How many of them have published a major work during that time? 3 years, everyone, 3 years. And if they have a stipend, 3 years where they were paid to produce a work, that's good enough. I would say 99% of MFA graduates in creative writing don't do that. But if you take a person who for 3 years focuses 100% on their writing, on isolation, and giving their all to it, I would say they have an infinitely bigger chance than someone who's having to drive to the university every day, grade papers, teach people, do random workshops, walk around campus, engage, read books they don't want. That's another thing I didn't mention. All the courses in university, you're reading all these books and doing all these random assignments, writing assignments that are taking energy and time away from what you need to be doing. You need to be reading the books that inspire you and that are going to be making you a better writer. So it's absolutely ridiculous. The MFA system is just a corporate commodification built upon the collapse of the writing industry, of book reading in general. And it's so crazy because it's all inherently connected. Who killed reading? The public education system, everyone, and how terrible it is. We can blame TikTok and technology and parents all we want, but there have always been distractions, and teachers and schools have gotten worse and have not grown to make people continue to be educated and care about self-education. So the book market is shrinking. And so it's insane that everyone flees back to the education system, higher education now, to become professors, to do these things, to be yes men, for a system that's also ineffective in killing book publishing. All the government grants, fellowships, professor jobs, all they're doing is creating a safety net for writers to publish books that don't have any intrinsic value in society. They are saturating the market with subpar work. If they didn't exist, the book market would be filled with people who book publishing companies or the market itself, if it's self-published, views valuable. I've known so many poets with connections who've gotten books published from a university press that are garbage, and their book sells a couple hundred copies and it just fades into the distance. But those end up on shelves. Those deter people from taking chances on modern poets, because even me, I'm jaded by all the random MFAs and diversity quota fill-ins that universities and publishing houses give me now. So I just return to the classics. I'm like, I'm just going to buy used books and focus on the people who were a part of book meritocracy. And so here are some common objections that I've gotten when I've talked about this. There are people in foreign countries, who are low, in poverty-stricken areas, who have an opportunity to come here and have their tuition waived and make $15,000 a year. And that does sound like a great opportunity. But do you want to be a leech? Do you want the core reason you're coming just because you can exploit that they need to accept a certain amount of international students or fill their diversity quota? That's going to be hanging over your shoulders the entire time, because no matter how poverty-stricken your area is, now with the internet, if you are watching this, you have access to millions of books, if not tens of millions of books, online for free at Shadow Library. You have a word processor, pen and paper, and if you are good enough, you will get noticed. And for whatever reason, if you're not getting noticed, if you read 5 marketing books and put a little bit of time in, you'll then get noticed. For all the people whose parents are on their backs and they're saying, this is just another 3 years I can focus on writing. Maybe it's not the best, but it's at least some progress. If I don't do this, they're gonna make me get a job, and I'm gonna have to get a normal job. I'd say you need to learn to live below your means. You need to learn to shift whatever lifestyle you've been living because of your parents or because of student loans, and you need to move into high-paying skills that don't require that much effort. Things you can do remotely. I mean, you could even engage in a string of side hustle jobs, learn things very slowly and build up, side businesses, just enough to live and to write and to start to create value. At the same time, maybe getting into marketing. You could do genre writing. You could do Kindle genre books under a pen name and use that as practice. You could be using the same energy you'd be doing in an MFA program or whatever else, doing genre fiction writing and making $1,500, $2,000 a month. But then you have, lo and behold, you've practiced. I have a friend who makes more money from his genre fiction writing than his literary fiction, but he's slowly but surely building a literary fiction career that may take him a couple decades, but he's dedicated that time. But they're budding. Like I've read all of his work, and I could see that his literary fiction uses a lot of the same ideas and techniques that he figured out in the genre fiction. For all my poets out there who say that this is the only way to make money in poetry, that is absolutely wrong. I have a playlist on how to make money with poetry on this channel without a university, without a major book publisher, because the only way you're gonna make money with poetry is if you're really lucky or if you're on the university leech system. For people who want to take the easy route, and this is just the easy way to move into a lifestyle as a writer, all I have to say to you is at some point in your life, that's all going to crumble down. All these programs that are built upon nothing, well, at some point are just going to be taken away. The funding and all that by the government, they will just swipe it. The humanities and the creative writing departments are the first to go. So if you guys like this video, comment down below your thoughts. If you want to see me make more videos like this, I'm very happy to, and I'll be telling you guys how to create a career as a writer.